Hi, I'm Manoj Parmar, Director at KRVI, Mumbai, practicing architect and urban designer, along with my colleague Dr. Binti Singh, Dean of Research at KRVI, have co-edited our new book, Resilience and Southern Urbanism Towards New Paradigm. This was published by Routledge in 2022. This book is a part of the Urban Future book series published by Routledge, and this series is edited by Dr. Binti Singh. We have structured this presentation in 4 segments. The first, discussion the conceptualization is a part of our larger research agenda. Second, the urban reality of India, resilience typology based on selected cities in India. Third, resilience index. And fourth, our ongoing research and the way forward. Now I request Dr. Binti Singh to carry forward the discussion.
Thank you, Professor Parmar. The idea of this volume incubated while working on our previous co-authored book, Smart City in India, Urban Laboratory Trajectory or Paradigm, published by Routledge in 2019. Working on the research for that volume, we had a first-hand exposure to the rapidly urbanizing landscape of India, especially the medium historic cities of India. Recent urban programs like the Smart City Mission in India, launched in 2015, have subjected these cities to massive and rapid transformations. An academic reflection to examine the gaps and challenges was imminent. Alongside working on the Building Resilient Urban Communities RUCOM research program, supported by the European Union and Erasmus Plus, brought us to the point of a deeper understanding of resilience, especially anchored to the experience of the most vulnerable cities of the global south. The questions of cultural practices and social structures provided the foreground for understanding of our built environment, motivated with new thinking and growing scholarship on building better urban futures. The pandemic of 2020 reaffirmed our ongoing research agenda around the questions of inclusion, culture, and urban form. Inputs from subject experts, knowledge partners, friends, and colleagues from around the world greatly facilitated our academic trajectory, especially the BINUCOM and the BRUCOM programs. Together, we have endeavored to carry this research forward to cover many more cities and develop a scholarship on urban studies based on the Southern experience. We also endeavor wide dissemination of resilience understanding, awareness generation among multiple stakeholders, and strive to find solutions, local solutions to pressing global problems. Resilience as a construct has myriad connotations. This book attempts to understand resilience embedded in the particularities of the urbanisms in Indian cities. We take them as representatives of Southern urbanism, chosen carefully from the vast, heterogeneous, and diverse cultural geographies of the country. We are aware that many more cities located in the south of the hemisphere could be part of this narrative. The ongoing research shall cover more such cities centered around the questions of cultural practices and community resilience. The rationale behind this volume is that the current discourse on resilience heavily draws from experience of cities of the north, percolated globally as a singular knowledge system. This can perhaps qualify as an offshoot of planetary urbanization. Hence, it is apparent that the prevailing global perspectives on resilience attempt to establish uniform trends, identify patterns of vulnerability, similarities in evolution, configuration, and political economy. The macro-urban processes are often those theorized as following the logic of neoliberal global capitalism. For instance, critical urban theory essentializes that cities worldwide are part of the global capitalist order, and their urban processes are consequent outcomes of the larger global order. Uniform and monolithic understandings of urbanity, modernity, development, and now resilience dismiss the specificities of cities of the Global South. The importance of cultural practices, shared identities, symbols, everyday urbanism practiced and lived by citizens could go a long way to determine the larger goals of sustainability, inclusion, smartness in the urban landscape. In the present times, our cities face many paradoxes. First, cities worldwide are bound by the general guidelines of global bodies like the UNDP, UN, SDGs, and our collective urban futures. No matter how much we think of our urban futures as collective, the questions of structural inequality to economic opportunities, access to basic services, and justice compel us to think again. The pandemic since early 2020 has wreaked havoc globally. Yet the ways in which cities of the developed North have responded are starkly in contrast to the implications of the pandemic for densely populated and resource-poor cities of the Global South. In the Global South, resilience takes a different meaning based on context-specific experiences and altogether different challenges posed by its cities. Second, the pandemic has reopened a series of questions forever left unanswered. It has exposed deep fractures and divisions of our already segregated societies. These include compartmentalization between mental labor and manual labor, the digital divide, class divisions, and the escalating migrant informal labor issues. Third, density works exceptionally well for optimal utilization of scarce resources, lowering carbon footprints and contributing to climate resilience in the long run, especially true for cities in developing economies like India. Fourth, the major disruptions in global supply chains, exports of essential goods, and mobility caused by the pandemic has driven us to rethink our growth trajectories, consumption patterns, and resource dependency with a call to become more self-reliant and a move towards what many describe as deglobalization. It is a policy and practice response at the national and city level and working towards an urban equality agenda and a new social contract that will perhaps help in realizing the globally acknowledged Sustainable Development Goals, especially SDG 11 of building safe, resilient, inclusive, and sustainable cities. Further, in the Urban Crisis Charter of the Global Alliance presented at the World Humanitarian Service, highlights that resilience is a core goal of the UN's New Urban Agenda. In recent times, urban scholars have pointed out the inadequacies and fallacies in existing urban theory as a singular knowledge system. Theories like occupancy urbanism, speculative urbanism, subaltern urbanism, telescopic urbanism, entangled urbanism, and ordinary cities have contributed to a veritable lexicon that allows for a robust scholarship on southern urbanism. I would now like to request Professor Parmar to take the discussion forward.
Thank you, Binti. The question of cultural practices built in the everyday urbanism of India are inextricably tied to the question of resilience. Scholars argue that resilience of social ecological system is its ability to absorb changes without having to lose its integrity in a system, form, or function. Number of urban studies scholars, sociologists, ecologists, and anthropologists have stressed the importance of deploying cultural ecology perspective for better understanding of urbanization and urban process in Indian context. Since historical time, the question of inclusion, heritage, placemaking, traditional livelihoods, and cultural associations of communities are embedded with ecologies like river, lakes, mangroves, and forest. A granular understanding of material and cultural meanings linked to the resource by communities is therefore imminent. The varied challenges of our cities, many of which are global, and attendant responses, most of which are local, drive home the fallacies of any monolithic knowledge system like planetary urbanization. Moreover, cities in India vary significantly in terms of geography, politics, social structure, urban fabric, cultural tradition, heritage, and economy. Especially, every single medium cities in India is a historic cities evolved around myth, belief, and socially organized system. This volume establishes the emergent resilience paradigm based on detailed case studies in three medium historic cities in India, woven together with generalized observation around this geographical spatiality of medium historic cities. We agree that a new vocabulary of urbanization is urgently required that would help us both analytically and cartographically to decipher the differentiated and rapidly mutating landscape of urbanization that are today being produced across the planet. The argument developed in this volume seeks to serve starting point for new thinking and responses on urban resilience anchored to the geographical spatiality of rapidly urbanizing medium historic cities in India like Bhopal, Nashik, and Kochi. The study mainly covers medium historic cities of India that represents the emergent urban reality and serve as laboratories for major transformation, both physical and cultural. In this volume, we undertake detailed case studies of three cities in India, Nashik, Bhopal, and Kochi, each representing a typology of resilience. Urban form is observed as the tangible product of the relationship between humans and their built environment, that is social, economic, and cultural. There is much common ground between the way urban morphologists study and conceptualize the form of cities and the way ecologists do the same with ecosystem, at the heart of which is the concept of resilience. The research questions that forms the bedrock of this study are questions related to traditional values and systems, questions related to cultural heritage, water and ecology, questions related to theorizing on southern urbanism, questions related to adaptation in contemporary times, questions related to vulnerabilities in current planning paradigm, and questions related to resilience practice. The emerging reality in India we draw from our previous research on smart city that came out as a volume titled Smart City in India, Urban Laboratory, Paradigm or Trajectory in 2019. We extend that research to add more typologies with statistical information, images and maps to drive the point that medium cities in India are the emergent urban reality. We also discuss in detail the rapid urban transformation that medium cities are currently subjected to, both materially and culturally, and how this impact their resilience. Of the three cities that we have selected for deeper understanding of resilience, Nashik stands out for its specific religious, cultural aspects and also as an emergent economic region in the state of Maharashtra. Nashik has emerged as an important economic hub as the region began to develop with the establishment of expressways, special economic zones, and second homes. It establishes the cultural resilience typology with secondary reference to other cities like Kolhapur and Ujjain. Many of historic cities in India are found to be crumbling under neglect or under development pressure. The vulnerability of the cultural heritage in historic core is related to lifestyle changes, stagnation, decay, and outmigration towards new development in the peripheries. In spite of these vulnerabilities, there are examples where some communities have exhibited the inherent resilience when question comes about an object or an act which they value. How does then one evaluate cultural heritage, tangible as well as intangible? Cultural resilience entails retaining the identity of the place and communities in highly globalized world. These identities have been incrementally built by generation before ours. In the context of climate change, the discussion on ecological impact inherent in current modes of demolition and new development are significant. It subscribes to the idea that resilient model of conservation and retrofitting of heritage asset to new age requirement, partially at least, relieves the pressure on our natural resources. The second city discussed in this volume is Bhopal in Madhya Pradesh. The study establishes water resilience with help of detailed case study of water system in India. This case study offers a theoretical and special framework that could initiate the understanding for resilient and water sensitive urban development. Historic towns and cities have exhibited complex and innovative water systems to make them self-sufficient over the ages, contributing to biogeological as well as socio-cultural identity through their inherent presence. The concept of piped water supply, growing urbanization, and impact of climate change have resulted in conflict among cities. Even those cities that have water as a resource face grim scenarios considering they exhibit dismal planning techniques and complete neglect of existing water system. Further, the wrath of climate change, either through drought or excessive rain, makes cities and communities vulnerable. It compares such historic cities like Kolkata, Jabalpur and Agra that have a close cultural association with water. These cities exhibit age-old water system to learn as well as engage with them to make cities resilient in the course of failing time. It further articulates that through water resilience strategies, there is a larger urban paradigm that could be addressed. The third city in this volume is Kochi, in the state of Kerala. Discourses on urban resilience in the global south in present epoch of Anthropocene cannot be limited to human-centric construct of socio-political and economic concerns. This part of the study emphasizes on the idea of socio-ecological resilience in the global south. The coastal cities of Indian peninsula are symptomatic of this. These cities have seen an increase in both the frequency of incidences as well as in the intensity of climatic vagaries like coastal flooding, hurricanes, and increased erosion due to intense wave action attributed to the rising sea level. Interestingly, the past decades have also seen their population increase steeply as compared to the earlier century. It critically delayers and analyzes coastal Kochi, an amphibious port-based city spread across the island of estuary, one of the largest estuarine landscape in Indian subcontinent. The possible way forward could be addressed by mediating urbanization with local ecologies, resulting in reduced vulnerabilities and better livelihood dependencies on natural system. Addressing the city as hyper-connected network of biotic and abiotic interactions opens up the possibilities of redefining the southern socio-ecological resilience in more granular manner. The findings of the study could help in filling the voids in current normative understanding of resilience, which are heavily biased by the discourses of the global north. Now, I would request Binti to carry forward the rest of the discussion.
Thank you, Professor Parmar. The neoliberal dictates of city design and planning efforts are steered to transform the city into hard infrastructure with attendant oil era priorities of road and car ownership, while people are relegated to privatized, resource-intensive, highly consumptive gated communities. This pattern of city building contradicts with our quest to support the expansion of renewable energy, reduce environment pollution, and build climate resilience. Cities are all infrastructure, while people relegate into customized private spaces. This planning paradigm, based on sociological principles of structural functionalism that create segregated use of land and spaces, is now being radically reimagined. Efforts are directed to find ways and means to understand how people experience the built environment and engage with city functioning on an everyday basis. This has resulted in the re-emergence of humanist urban thought globally and calls for an integrated urban science discipline. This new imagination responds to the long-established critique of master plans, cities built from scratch, dehumanizing of spaces like the office cubicle, single-use office spaces, cities layered with flyovers and expressways, business districts filled with buildings that are vertically beyond human scale, the horizontal distances of planned suburbs, peri-urban fringes, and the like. We now live in a changed world, transformed in every bit way than we had ever imagined. Material and moral densities in our times have risen both in sheer volume and complexity. Technology has played a major role in this evolution. Digital technologies have been skillfully deployed, especially during the pandemic times, to bridge the gaps between demand and supply, between farmers, food producers, and housing societies on the one hand, NGOs and political and relief workers and migrant laborers, medical providers and patients, and most importantly, frontline municipal service providers and citizens. In this volume, we draw attention to the urbanization trends of medium-sized cities of India and their distinct urbanisms. The sheer heterogeneity and diversity of these cities propel us to study them in detail through the lens of culture, a key component of resilience, and arrive at a typology of urban resilience. As already noted in urban scholarship, the new wave of urbanization currently underway in the global south, of which India occupies a large part, unfolds under conditions of great uncertainty, characteristically different from the 19th and 20th century urbanization in the Western Northern Hemisphere. Most of this new wave urbanization runs the risk of repeating the unsustainable patterns of the earlier phases of urbanization after the Second World War, the environmental and social costs of which would be tremendous. As discussed, resilience cannot be viewed as an absolute aspect at a certain scale. Rather, the implications of planning for resilience needs to consider the various scales of application, namely city and regional systems, community, and the individual level. The concept of resilience for global South cities cannot be discussed without a reference to the 5 capitals: environmental, economic, institutional, social, and human. These must be read alongside the learnings from the individual cities discussed in this volume. These include social cues, cultural practices, community participation, availability of funding and resources, both immediate and long-term environmental dependencies, and attendant responses unique to these cities. These responses can help enhance the resilience capacity of the city, help to identify the risk awareness, risk perceptions, and the eventual action capacities for which the city administration as well as the communities need to plan. On these lines, we have attempted in this volume to develop a resilience framework that could help generate a resilience index customized to the specificities of each rapidly urbanizing geography. We imagine this resilience index neither as a static document nor as a canonical rulebook. It must be updated regularly based on its ability of prioritizing effective responses to external forces and uncertain events. In other words, for achieving its very purpose. The constant feedback from its application will help to reorganize the priorities and strategies through the cycle of time. The dynamic nature of operation ensures the effectiveness of this index. Working on the resilience index may go a long way to address the uncertain futures of the cities of the global south that are resource poor and vulnerable. Read alongside the resilience typology discussed in this volume, urban stakeholders can work their ways towards homegrown solutions to surmounting global challenges and build better urban futures. This volume is part of our ongoing work with another volume titled Negotiating Resilience with Hard and Soft City, currently in manuscript compilation stage with more cities both from the northern and southern parts of the hemisphere. That volume, which is again going to be published by Routledge in the Urban Futures series, carries forward this research to build an argument on just resilience, just as in justice. We thank you for giving this opportunity to discuss our work. We look forward to having your opinions, comments, and criticisms. Thank you very much.
The book was globally launched online at MIT USP on 11th May 2022. It was subsequently discussed in presence at MIT USP on 16th May 2022, and also along with that, a book was launched at University of Texas, El Paso on 23rd May 2022. With this, we would like to thank chapter contributors Dr. Binti Singh, Manoj Parmar, Vikram Pawar, Jamshid Bhiwandiwala, and Sandeep Menon at KRVI. Thank you.